Well, hello there, girlfriend. Ingafay here. Super excited to be with you all today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ingafay, and I'm a confidence coach and beauty enthusiast. Yeah, so today I'm really excited to share my coaching girlfriend, Alisha Carlson. She is a non diet lifestyle coach and founder of Stronger Way. She works with women using a non diet approach for food, fitness, and life transformation to help her clients create a lifestyle that's healthy and balanced without dieting and restriction. She is teaching women how to radically love themselves and their bodies and their lives. So, without further ado, here is my friend Alisha. We'll see you inside. Hey, girl, how are you?
Hey, Ingafay, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So happy to be here with you. So tell us a little bit about you before we actually get into how to create a lifestyle without dieting. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, who you serve, and how you serve them.
Yeah, my name is Alisha Carlson. As you said, I live in Oregon. I'm a mom. I've got two kids, one a sixth grader and then a ninth grader this year. So kind of entering a different season of life. My husband is in the National Guard, so we are kind of a military family. I mean, we're a weird military family in the sense that we're not on base or anything like that, but we still have some of the same challenges, I think, that those families experience as well. I've got two crazy dogs. I love what I do. I really do feel like coaching is kind of the thing that I was made to do.
Awesome. So we're going to talk today about how to create a lifestyle without dieting. Now, I'm sure when people saw this title, they were just like, okay, so how do you do that? But before you get into exactly how it works, tell us a little bit about how you got to this point of wanting to kind of create this type of lifestyle.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, probably a lot of people that are a lot of women really that are probably still kind of dieting or approaching food and exercise from the diet mentality would argue that they are living a healthy lifestyle. That was certainly me. That was where I found myself, 4 years ago. I absolutely thought 100%. I've just established this healthy lifestyle. I exercise almost every day.
Right.
I'm watching what I eat. I feel like I'm eating pretty clean. And so it really, I think I was thinking that it was a lifestyle. And I will never forget the day that I had this huge epiphany that this healthy lifestyle that I was living was actually more of a diet. I was standing in my kitchen taking, progress pics, taking the before pics again. And I just felt so discouraged and so defeated. At this point, I had been on my own personal fitness journey for over a decade. Wow. I had gone back to school to get my degree in exercise science. I studied nutrition. I was really immersed in this whole fitness culture, fitness lifestyle. And I just remember thinking, like, why do I constantly feel like I'm either starting over or I'm struggling to keep the results that I'm getting?
Right.
And I am a Christian, so I believe that I heard as clearly as I could from the Holy Spirit is what I would say, that I had been dieting this whole time and calling it a lifestyle. And hearing that revelation or hearing that epiphany it stopped me in my tracks and really has been kind of the catalyst, I guess, for the work that I do now with my clients around food and exercise, healthy habits, just different lifestyle things, but then also that deeper life coaching stuff that happens to really work with my clients to help them heal their relationship to themselves at the end of the day.
Right. Interesting. So how do you create a healthy and balanced lifestyle without dieting? I mean, that just seems like a misnomer.
Really? I would be curious to know from your perspective why that is a misnomer.
Because I've seen people, I know personally myself, this is what we had in common when you were telling me that you competed as a figure in a figure competition. I did it as a bodybuilding competition where I was concerned about what I was eating all the time. I worked out twice a day, on a regular basis. I had like one junk meal, every week, just one junk meal, which was normally like pizza or a hamburger or something like that. But you hear so many times that people are going to do this for a certain amount of time. I'm going to do this plan for 75 days, or I'm going to do this workout or this regimen for 6 weeks. And then after that's over, then I can go back to the way I'm eating. And ironically, I'm just going to magically stay the size and look the way I look right now, even though the things that got me here are not going to be what I'm maintaining to keep it going.
Yeah. So I think, right there, you really kind of hit the nail on the head in the sense that it's that diet mentality, right? Of like, okay, I'm going to make these changes for 6 weeks. I'm going to make these changes for 12 weeks or 75 days or whatever the number was.
Right.
And so you're willing to make the changes for that period of time. But then we do have kind of that false sense, at least I know I did, especially when I first was kind of like on the weight loss journey or on my fitness journey. It was like, oh, okay, like if I do this for 6 weeks and I get to the goal, I would immediately notice that I was like slipping back into the old habits, the old patterns, and the old way of thinking really about food. And so when I'm talking about a healthy, balanced lifestyle that you're not starting and stopping again, it really is kind of figuring out, okay, what does that healthy lifestyle look like for you, particularly in this specific season of life?
Right.
It's like finding, that handful of habits that you're committed to doing that fit sort of seamlessly into the rest of your life, at least for now, right? It's like, it might look different in the summers than it does in the fall, which is where we are now. Kids are just going back to school. So life kind of changes again. But it's really being able to kind of be flexible, I think, and rather than like rigid and really strict around food, around exercise, and at the end of the day, figuring out what actually works specifically for you and your life circumstances and the specific season. Because I think that's another issue with kind of the traditional approach to fitness or health or weight loss or those types of things, is that it's follow these rules, follow this plan, and kind of do it perfectly.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not going to get the results. And we've seen what that creates. That doesn't create long-term results for anybody.
So how do you create a plan that's flexible but still works? Because that just seems like two different types of things. Because I know the rigid plan of you can't eat anything but oatmeal in the morning, and you have to eat every 2 to 3 hours, and this is what your meals are supposed to be like, and if you're anything outside of this, you're doing it completely wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess again, I would kind of argue that works. It works maybe for a certain set of people for a certain amount of time, but my experience is that it ultimately didn't work because I constantly found myself having to start over. And so it's like, that was a big red flag for me, that this isn't ultimately something that works, because it's not something that I can kind of continue on indefinitely, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be making certain tweaks to, what my workouts look like, or, what my food looks like, again, just based on kind of what's happening within the rest of my life. I will say that I'm a big proponent of really teaching people how to discern and listen to what their body is telling them. So for some people, certain things are going to work, but that may not necessarily work for another client. So a lot of it really is kind of testing and trying different things out, figuring out what specifically worked about that for you individually, what didn't work, and then what small tweak or shift do you want to make? And I think about this in the sense of when our kids were little and we were first introducing solids to them, you would introduce one food at a time, right? You would introduce one stimulus at a time and see how that child responded to know whether or not they had, any adverse reactions, any allergies, or, anything like that. And so I think that that's really the approach that I like to take with my clients. It's like, let's introduce one stimulus, one change to your nutrition, to your lifestyle. Let's see kind of how that works and what we can sort of tweak, and then we sort of add on, rather than, I think, kind of the traditional mindset is I have to change everything about what I'm eating, everything about how I'm working out. And oftentimes that ends up just creating additional life stress that's unnecessary and ultimately ends up working against you, especially if your goal is fat loss.
Right. So when you implement that change, how long do you allow them to, I guess, kind of marinate on the change before you add something else? Or is it on a case-by-case basis?
I would say, it really is on a case-by-case basis. And I'm a big proponent of kind of letting my clients lead the way in a sense, right? It's like we all know that we're going to be way more apt to do something if it was our idea. That doesn't mean that I don't offer insight or perspective or, even bits and pieces of my expertise from a nutrition or fitness or coaching standpoint.
Right.
But usually I try to limit it, it's like, let's cap it at maybe trying 3 things this week, because much more than that, it can become really overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I do meet with my clients once a week. So we really do get time every single week to really assess this last week. For some people, it might take, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of implementing a change before we can really figure out, okay, maybe the way that you're approaching implementing exercise or, adding in more vegetables, like that's not really working. So how can we kind of go back to the drawing board? But, I'm a big fan of evaluating often. So even sometimes that's a day by day, I'll have my clients kind of do that as part of their quote unquote homework for the week. Is, okay, these are the changes that you said that you wanted to make, or these are the things that you're working on. Just kind of notice maybe at the end of the day, how did that go for you? And can you make a small adjustment even that next day?
So how do you overcome people saying, okay, well, I can do it for a little while, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this permanent type of change?
So I think there's 2 parts to that. I think the first part is, let's really examine that story that you're telling yourself about it. If you don't think that you're going to make it forever, one, I would ask, okay, well then why make it in the first place at all? To really kind of get them to think about, okay, so why am I wanting to make this change if I'm not committed to making it forever?
Right.
Just to help them explore, because I think a lot of times we don't really spend time on our own with that deeper introspection and reflection and really getting to the why. For a lot of people, I think something that's really popular, and this kind of ties into the whole fitness competitions as well, but you'll see people that are really gung-ho about making specific diet or exercise changes to lose weight for a wedding, to lose weight for a vacation or a special event.
Right.
And so in their mind, they're willing to sacrifice for that short period of time for that little sliver of a result. I mean, I could get into the reasons why I don't really think that's healthy. I mean, we know that the constant weight loss and weight gain is actually worse than people that tend to just naturally carry a little bit of weight with them anyway. So that constant yo-yo dieting, not to mention that typically and almost always, every time that you lose weight, you gain more back so you end up being heavier than when you started.
Interesting.
So that's another reason that I would say, is it really worth it to constantly be trying to lose the 10 pounds for these special events or whatever, knowing that there's a likelihood you're going to gain more than that 10 pounds back every time that you diet down.
Curious, why is it that way? Why is it that way that you gain more the second time when you're doing that yo-yo dieting? Because I think that's a great point to bring to light.
Yeah, that it has to do with our metabolism and just how it responds to those changes. So our body is a lot less concerned, like from a biological standpoint, is a lot less concerned about us reaching our goal weight than it is about keeping us alive.
Right.
And so our body doesn't differentiate essentially if I'm intentionally decreasing calories versus if I was, for whatever reason, wasn't able to eat. And so therefore I'm kind of starving, right? It's like your body doesn't biologically, it doesn't know
the difference.
No. And so especially when people are, extremely low calorie, and then they're adding a lot of intense exercise on top of that to really increase that calorie deficit.
Right.
That creates kind of this freak out session a little bit for your body and the metabolism. It's like, okay, we don't have a ton of energy coming in, but we're expending a lot of energy. The metabolism slows itself down, which is where a lot of times people will see immediate results with kind of that typical diet of eat less, exercise more.
Right.
But then eventually they hit that plateau.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times what, people will say is that you need to actually add in some more food so that your body, it creates that safety that it can continue to let some of the weight or some of the fat go. So, at the end of the day, the reason that happens is a protective measure. So it's like, okay, we were kind of in this famine or starvation mode for a while. Right. We don't know when that's going to happen again. So let's kind of create a safeguard essentially by adding a little extra weight on the back end.
Yeah, so our body is basically protecting itself from starving to death. So
Yes.
in a way that we probably don't want it to, but it's going to do it automatically regardless of what we do. So I guess that's why it's very important to make sure that you're not doing those yo-yo diets. So we kind of briefly talked about this because I'm sure the burning question is, okay, so if I want to change my lifestyle, I want to create a lifestyle without dieting, and you're telling me that these yo-yo dieting things are not working, even when I want to go to my class reunion and just look thebomb.com, or I'm going to a family wedding or something significant or I'm getting married, I want to look good in my dress kind of thing. So how do you do it? I mean, it just seems, and I know the average person is thinking, it just seems like so hard to do. I want to eat some cake. So am I able to eat that cake occasionally in moderation and then be able to pull back? I mean, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am not a fan I mean, I don't ever prescribe that somebody has to cut a particular food out. But I would say that the key thing to really work on, if you're really serious about breaking up with the diet mentality, getting away from, getting off of that cycle where it feels like you're constantly losing weight, gaining it back, losing weight, or maybe you've lost weight for a little while and it just feels like it's so much work to keep that weight off.
Right.
Then you really have to go kind of a layer deeper and work on your relationship to food. So that you can have the cake, you can have it in moderation, you can have it occasionally without having to have so much. Because that is one of those things too, mentally, that, when you're dieting down and you're restricting things,
you want it more.
You want it more. But then also, once you give yourself the permission to have it, it's so much harder to just have a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that's where kind of that binge and restrict behavior can come in, where it's like, okay, I can be good Monday through Friday, but then something happens, the floodgate opens Friday night, I eat my face off over the weekend, and then I'm starting over on Monday.
Exactly.
And so, it really is changing the way that you think about food. It's changing it's removing the restriction. So it's really giving yourself permission to, it's like no food is necessarily off limits, but it's really deciding like how much do you want to eat of specific foods, and then cleaning up your relationship with those particular foods so that you're not being controlled by the food, but you really can kind of take it or leave it whenever you want to.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point because, I can remember when I was doing my bodybuilding, and I think I told you this, that I had one meal a week that I could actually just eat whatever I wanted. And it was just crazy the way it just seemed like all the TV commercials were talking to me during the week. And then it was just like on Saturday, because that was my one meal, I would sit there and think, okay, so what am I going to have today? Oh, I think I'm going to have some pizza because that pizza really looked good on that commercial. And then the next day, I remember feeling like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that I just ate all of that, because now I don't even feel like doing anything, and I would have to start my routine all over again. So I can totally relate to that for sure. Cool. So this has been so good, so good. And I'm hoping that people will take a lot from this. One thing I did want to ask is, if you don't have, it sounds like you're telling people that they can kind of eat in moderation. I know my uncle is a doctor. He always says you have to do things in moderation. So do you have people tracking their food, like documenting? They have like a food log where they're actually writing down what they're eating. How are they cognizant on a regular basis of exactly what they're eating, what they're putting in their body?
Yeah, I mean, again, I definitely think like keeping track in some way that works for you can be definitely a helpful tool for most people. If you are somebody that kind of leans towards, or maybe you have sort of eating disorder tendencies, or really even the disordered eating tendencies where there's food obsession, you can be really rigid and inflexible, I would typically kind of shy away from doing any specific tracking, especially regarding like calories or macros or numbers or anything like that, because that can actually trigger that obsession and that fixation.
Okay.
But I think for the most part, right, it's like just writing down what you ate, when did you eat it? Did you notice, like a lot of times, especially in the intuitive eating, it's using a hunger scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is being, you are famished, you're starving, you need to eat now. 10 is being like uncomfortably stuffed. where on that scale were you before you started eating? How full did you feel when you got done? And then you can kind of make adjustments based on that at that next meal, right? So it's like, if I'm like, okay, now that I'm sort of thinking about it, I was kind of a 3, like I was really hungry. So it felt really hard for me to stop myself from eating. I just noticed I was eating so fast.
Right.
Then I ended up feeling, by the time I was done, I was like a 9, like I ended up being stuffed. Okay, well now I know maybe I don't want to wait until I'm a 3. Maybe next time I'm going to try to eat at about a 5 and then see if I can eat slightly less.
Right.
So I think kind of journaling in that way, again, it's really examining, how was I feeling before? Was I feeling super stressed? Was I feeling tired? Because that can really drive specific behaviors around food, or can even drive you to eat different kinds of foods. I know for myself, when I don't have a great night's sleep, I'm so much hungrier the next day. And I'm naturally kind of craving and drawn towards eating things that are higher in carbs. So sugar, more crackers or chips or different things like that, because that's going to give me that quick burst of energy. Versus if I'm sleeping well and I start my day, with a nice balanced breakfast with enough protein, maybe some oatmeal or something like that and some healthy fats. My energy is usually sustained for a good 4 hours. And then it's like, okay, now I'm kind of starting to think about food. I'm starting to get hungry. So yeah, I definitely think like keeping track of what you eat, sometimes even planning ahead what you're going to eat for that day can be really helpful, because then you're not having to think about it in the moment. And while it might be a little uncomfortable, like if you plan to eat, I don't know, let's say a chicken breast, some salad, and a sweet potato at lunch, and everybody else is going out to eat fast food, like that might in the moment sound better, but you have to just kind of reconnect with like, why did you plan to eat that when you planned it? But obviously that's getting into a little bit more of the stuff that I would typically work on my clients with coaching. But yeah, I think journaling, keeping track of your food, but doing it in a way to really help you understand what was happening with your body, what was happening mentally and emotionally with you as well, because all 3 of those things kind of play a part in what you eat, how often you eat, and how much you end up eating.
Right. Awesome. Well, you have given us some great stuff, girl. So I wanted to ask you, I know that you have a freebie that you wanted to share with my audience. So talk a little bit about that and, how they can find you, because I'm going to put your website up here.
Yeah. So if you go to AlishaCarlson.com, you can download my Mindful Eating project. And it's a pretty big kit, but it kind of takes a lot of the stuff that we talked about here, and it gives you some practical application with that, so that you can start to kind of familiarize yourself with the hunger scale, really working on your relationship with specific foods, removing the restriction that you might have around those kinds of foods, and really just learning how to kind of think about food and eating in a different way so that you're starting to clean up that diet mentality. On my website, you can also find the link so you can check out my podcast, The Strong Her Way. And then, of course, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need, then I would definitely love to invite you to book a free consult. And so you can do that either by emailing me, Alisha@AlishaCarlson.com, or connecting with me either on Instagram or Facebook and shooting me a message there.
Awesome. So her social media handles will be down in the description of this video. So you guys don't have to worry about that, as well as her website. So you'll be able to get in touch with Alisha later on and not have to worry about writing anything down. You'll have those hyperlinks in there where you can just kind of click and go to her site. So before we end, girl, do you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share with us?
I think the thing that comes to mind is if you are really looking at kind of breaking up with dieting, breaking up with that diet mentality, know that it can be done, but it also is a little bit of a process. So we typically are sold kind of the quick fix, right? It's like lose X pounds in a week or in 21 days or, 6 weeks or something like that. And while that's sexy, it definitely appeals to that inner desire for us for those quick results or that instant gratification. Not to say that you aren't going to have some immediate wins once you start to really go down this hole or this journey. start applying the stuff in the kit or that you've heard here, but just be patient with yourself, recognizing that a lot of your behaviors are years in the making, right? So you probably have learned from your family of origin, from the society around you, from your culture. So there is sort of a process of unlearning and kind of relearning new neural pathways, new ways of thinking about food and therefore behaving with food. So don't get discouraged if you feel like you take a couple steps forward and then you take a step back. That really is a part of the process. It's a part of the journey. Just keep learning as you go, keep evaluating, and just making those small, simple shifts along the way.
Awesome. Well said. Well, thank you again for taking time out to share with my audience today. For those of you who are watching, if you know of anyone you would love for me to interview that's talking about some kind of self-care issue for women, I would love to know who they are. So be sure to DM me or drop a comment down in this video and let me know who you want me to interview. So as always, thanks for watching and bye for now.
Bye. Thanks for having me.